showing out, making moves, no doubt. FFA pride, it's what we're all about. From classroom dreams to real world flair, we got the stories you won't find anywhere. Beyond the jacket where the stories unfold, voices of the future, fearless and bold. Tune in now, let the passion ignite. It's more than a jacket, it's a way of life. Beyond the jacket where passion meets purpose.
Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Jacket. We are so happy that you are here spending another Friday with us on the show. Today's episode is probably going to be one of my new favorites from a fellow past Florida FFA member and friend of mine, Miss Sophia Young. We're so excited that you get to listen in to her FFA journey and where she is now. It's quite an inspiring path. Sophia, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners of Beyond the Jacket?
Yeah, so my name is Sophia Young, and I was a FFA member, I guess now FFA alumni, for the state of Florida. So I was in the Blue Jacket for 7 years, and I was very blessed to have that opportunity. The Blue Jacket has taken me all sorts of different directions and pathways and ways that I never thought that, I would end up on. I'm very fortunate, though, to be a student here at Montana State University studying animal science, livestock management with a pre-vet certificate, and I'm a proud member and vice president of the Collegiate FFA club here.
That's quite the resume, Sophia.
It is.
I know that things can be busy our freshman year in college, and it's not always easy, so very commendable. Mm-hmm. But you started 7 years ago in FFA and are even doing it collegiately. Where did your interest first spark?
So I like to say my interest first sparked with my grandparents. My grandparents used to show cattle when they were kids, and it's not something that they talk about a whole lot, but it's something that, if you bring it up now and again, they're very open and welcome to share that with you. And so I think that's where my love fell. If my middle school year, I heard that they had guinea pigs, and I was like, yeah, that's the room that I want to be in. And so it really started with my grandparents, but in actuality, it was because the ag room had guinea pigs and snacks, which I think is a lot of ways that a lot of members join into FFA is they lure you in with the snacks. But I love it, and I wouldn't regret it for the world, and I'm very glad that I was very into guinea pigs at the time, and I was like, yeah, this is where I want to go.
Absolutely. I think the free snack thing can be validated across the nation. We always had a new member barbecue as our first meeting of the year. And I think one of the driving factors for that was that kids got a free meal.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? You feed them and they'll come. At least that's what my grandfather always used to tell me. So
yeah.
I don't know. But Collegiate FFA, talk to me about that. We have not had someone on the podcast quite yet that has been in Collegiate FFA. I'm not, so maybe you can teach me.
Yeah, so I love our Collegiate FFA program here. One of the things that I really like about Montana State is it did start as a land-grant school, so they're very focused in their agriculture, which is something that I love coming from a urban area where you don't really see that traditional agriculture as often. So it's great being able to get that experience here. And I love our Collegiate FFA because it works a lot with our ag department. So we try to give students and other majors the opportunity to really see what we're doing other than just obviously traditional farming. So one of the things that we do as Collegiate FFA officers and members is we work really heavily with state staff. So we help with the Montana FFA Association and Foundation. So we are helping with convention, we are helping with the John Deere Ag Expo event, we are hosting workshops, we are having a dance, we are putting up food, we are making sure that our members are comfortable when they're here on campus. We are doing so much with our state FFA. It's like a nice little extension of it. We also are getting some virtual workshops set up so children and students across the state of Montana are able to kind of connect with one another and get advice for CDEs and LDEs. So then when they go to some of these state competitions, they aren't stressing about them as much because they've practiced for them. And one of the things that I thought was definitely interesting when I started as a CFFA member and working with the Montana FFA Association is they do all of their state competitions during state convention, which I thought was interesting because Florida spreads them out, but they do all of them. So vet, livestock, marketing, prepared public speaking, like everything is all during that week of state convention. And I was like, wow, that is a lot of competitions in 1 week.
If you were like us that did multiple,
Mhm.
I couldn't imagine doing livestock judging and a prepared or extemp speech in the same day,
Yeah.
much less like, oh my gosh, I would be stressed.
Yes.
Very if that was me.
Oh, yeah.
But the podcast focuses mostly on SAEs.
Mhm.
What was yours?
So I was very fortunate to have two, and I didn't think that the one I ended up with would be the one I ended up with. It kind of is that backwards way that life works. I wanted to show lambs, and I was going to show lambs, and nobody was going to stop me from showing lambs, and I was going to have a lamb, and that was that. And then I got to my high school, and I realized how much of building a lamb pen was, and like all the things that I had to do for a lamb pen. And then like I couldn't do anything over my summer other than taking care of my lamb. So then I was like, you know what, maybe I won't show a lamb. Maybe I'll figure something else out. So then I was talking to some friends of mine who have little brothers and sisters in our feeder elementary school. And I was like, hey, are they going to, be in an ag program, join FFA? Like, I think they should, just because of the leadership skills it gives you, because it truly does prepare you for real world interviews and problem solving and all those skills that we can rattle on about all the things that it does. But I was like, they should do it. It's a great eye opener. And she was like, no, they're not. They don't have an ag program anymore. And I was like, what do you mean they don't have an ag program? She's like, nobody had an interest in it. And I was like, okay, that's not cool. So then I was going to some elementary schools, and I was talking to some kindergartners, and they were like, yeah, my food comes from the back of Publix. And I was like, what?
I've had that happen way too many times to count.
So many times. And I like that is beyond the whole chocolate brown cows thing. That is like way beyond that. And like my grandparents were farmers, so I'm like, no. And no. So I saw a need in my community for agriculture education, because I was like, these kids are going to grow up thinking their food comes from the back of a Publix, and that's not okay in my book. So I started going to elementary and middle schools, and I taught them, I like to call them immersive agricultural lessons, because I would get my friend group together and I would go, if you were 10 years old and you were sitting in a science classroom, because a lot of elementary schools don't have ag classes, so I'd have to go during science. I'm like, if you're sitting in a science classroom and this girl's coming to talk to you about ag, what would you want to do? And we would just sit around my dining room table and come up with ideas and lessons and funky titles that I could submit to these teachers and be like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. And then it expanded into middle school, because obviously when you're doing something for so long, like you grow up, but also the students you teach grow up. So then my fifth graders became sixth graders, and then my sixth graders are trying to find me, and they're like, why are you not in my classroom anymore? And I'm like, I don't know. Why am I not in your classroom? And so then I started going to middle schools. And then as I got older, I started going to some high schools and helping out in my high school ag room. So then I just kind of spent a lot of my semester driving my little Subaru around Orange County and going to all these little middle schools and elementary schools. And I loved it, and my kids loved it. My favorite thing about it was I did a vet lesson, and so my kids had to diagnose stuffed animals of mine. And they were like, this dog has leprosy. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Try again. And just I love those kids to pieces. My kids made me a grad stole, and it has every single name of the kids that I taught on it, front and back. And one of the administrators gave it to me, and I like about cried. I like was sobbing, and I'm like, this is so nice of my kids. Like I probably still have artwork from them. Like if I was not wanting to be a vet, I would be like a teacher, an ag teacher, like a teacher, just because I love that aspect. Absolutely. And then the shorter story is I became a vet assistant. So I had a vet science SAE. You need vet hours to get into vet school, and you need a lot of them. So I became a vet assistant my junior year of high school. And since then, I've been around the block with being a vet assistant, to say the least. I've done a lot of scut work. I've seen a lot of cool things that people might not think is cool, but I think it's cool. And then when I moved out here to Montana, I worked as a small animal, large animal, exotic vet assistant. So that was definitely a whole new world because I was so used to dogs and cats, and it was no longer dogs and cats. It was dogs, cats, pigeons, peacocks, parrots, a bobcat at one point, horses, cows, like everything.
That's all over the place, but
Oh yeah.
the diversity in your SAEs is so impressive. I had multiple, but really didn't put my heart and soul into all of them. Just kind of my one baby, obviously AgCom. But when you were teaching your students, did you make your lesson plans organically? Did you use different resources? How did that work?
Yeah. So when I was making lesson plans, this was like pre ChatGPT. So I'm not saying use ChatGPT, but my friends and I like to say that we were ChatGPT because we would literally just sit there and write on notepads and all these things. And one of my friends is a digital marketing major, so she would be like making all these graphics and PowerPoints for me, and I'm like, thank you. But it mainly stemmed from US resources. They're the easiest to get at Florida, unless I was doing something on a national scale. There were a few times where I would pull resources from USDA, other states, like just to get facts, because my goal was to show that these kids can understand agriculture, but also understand agriculture on a national level to prepare them for high school and college to understand it on a global level. So I pulled from everywhere under the sun. And then my elementary kids, I was very grateful to work with Florida Ag in the Classroom. And so I would always get their books and their worksheets. And so I would read those to my little kindergartners so that we could like understand agriculture together, because trying to like explain to them vet science and horticulture and some of these harder topics to understand, they just kind of look at me with a blank look on their face, and that's okay.
It is harder. When I was doing front page ag hardcore through my sophomore and junior year, I taught an ag club on Tuesdays. Not multiple schools, not at the level you did, but I met like every other week on Tuesdays. But these kids were from kindergarten to 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to make sure that my lessons like made sense to the kindergartners, but also weren't too boring for 8th graders. And I just remember like almost playing tug of war with myself to the point where like Florida Ag in the Classroom was my saving grace for lesson plans. Holy cow, because like you said, like AI really wasn't a thing until just recently. So we didn't have that in our back pocket. So to be able to have your friends help you and obviously those amazing teacher resources, super helpful. Did your SAE like inspire you to be a vet, or have you always wanted to be a vet?
I've always wanted to be a vet. I think I don't know what it is, and I would have to say it was my first vet that made me really want to be a vet. A little like backstory that not a lot of people know is I used to live in Vero Beach, Florida, which is like
so close to where I'm from. I didn't know that.
It is. Yeah, I lived there probably until after moving from Montana. I think I lived there until I was 9. Like I was there for a while. And
that's insane.
I know. My vet down there, I love her to pieces. She would not talk down to me in a clinic. And I would go in for like my dogs would need vaccines or something. Like nothing big. And she would sit there and she would explain to me what the vaccine was, what it did, how she was injecting it, where she was injecting it, what type of needle she was using. Like she was explaining it to me step by step, and I like was in awe. And every time she would take me to the back and she would like, okay, here's this machine that does this, and here's this that does this, and here's all of our vet techs, and our vet techs are really important. So like make sure you say thank you when you can. And just like in awe. I think she still has a picture, like a baby picture of me and my 3 dogs in the back of her clinic. Like I love her. And she saw everything. So she saw dogs, cats, exotics, large animals, small, like everything.
Yeah.
And she, just the compassion she had for her work was something that I aspired to have, because I have worked with great vets and I've worked with not so friendly vets. And I can say that she is like the vet. Yeah, she is. I love her so much, but she is just like, she has so much passion and compassion. And like, she is there for you for your puppy visits to your end visits. Like, she is there for it all. And she never let like financials come in the way. She was like, let me save your animal and your baby first, and we'll worry about financials far down the road. Like, don't even worry about it. And she, like, that is something that I aspire to be, because I have watched families, break because they can't afford vet care. And I'm like, but I can make you be able to afford vet care. Like, let me help you. Let me help you and your dog.
Heart for service. And
Yes.
that's what
Yes.
I just love that, and the ability to combine what is your passion and then to have somebody inspire that and kind of just put the ball in your court, and then you're like the next NBA star. I don't know if that exactly made sense, but I'm glad that you had this woman in your life that taught you what it is to be a vet and be compassionate. I know we're getting near the end of your episode and all good things are coming, but before we got on the air, we talked a little bit about what's going on in Montana for you. What are your next steps beyond the jacket, if you will? What is Miss Heart of the Valley?
Yeah, so Miss Heart of the Valley is something I never thought I would do. Again, those funny backwards ways life has of, snagging it up. So I served as Miss Agriculture USA my, sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school. And then I served as Miss Florida Ag Herculture for my senior year of high school. And I was talking to one of my friends who's from Georgia, and she was like, have you thought about doing Miss America? And I was like, no, why would I do that? Like, that has no effect on me whatsoever. She goes, well, I think you should. So I got in contact with the director, and I was like, okay, I'll just look, I'll just see. We always say we'll just look, and it's never just look. But I'm like, I'll just.
That's the FFA thing coming out on us.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like, I'll look into it. And then you're like, I need a dress, I need a crown, I got an interview.
Oh, yeah. I called her, and I was like, and I felt bad because I was like, I was like, oh, I'm a Florida resident. I don't think I can do this. And she's like, no, as long as you're a full-time student, you're good. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And then she was like, well, what would your title be if you could be anybody? And I was like, oh, I really want to be Miss Heart of the Valley, because Bozeman, if you didn't know, is surrounded by the Bridger Mountains. So we really are in a valley. And I'm like, well, Bozeman is the heart of the valley. And the animal shelter here is also called Heart of the Valley, unironically. So I was like, Miss Heart of the Valley. And she's like, okay, yeah, keep that in mind. And then I think December rolled around, or November rolled around, and then suddenly I'm on a list and I'm a candidate for Miss Montana. I was like, okay. And then December rolled around and I have a crown and a sash in the mail, and I'm like, okay. And then, I think January is when I finalized my partnership with Not One More Vet for my community service initiative. And I was like, okay. And then it's just been surprise after surprise. And it's whole new territory, but I would not change it for the world. In very Sophia Young FFA agriculture, not traditional pageant queen fashion, my talent is teaching pet owners how to do first aid on the trails. So then if something happens to their dog, they can triage it. So then they're not if the dog comes to us, we're not it's not in critical care, it's in just care. And I like am wearing hot pink scrubs, and I have hot pink shoes, and I have like a hot pink backpack, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And it's all sorts of fun.
Absolutely. I love how you tied, like, maybe you will be the next Miss America, and I'll be on that TV like, oh, I know her, you know? But that being said, you're tying your passion that came from FFA 7-8 years ago now, and you're going to use that in the future in a new type of official dress, if you will.
One of my favorite parts about the Miss Montana organization is a Miss Montana 6 years ago. Her talent, she wore her official dress from Missoula, Montana, and she taught people how to show a chicken, and she won.
Gosh, that's awesome. That's
I know.
So cool.
I know.
That's fantastic. No, I wish you the best of luck with that, and hopefully
Thank
see you on the big screen one day.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. What's one piece of advice you would give to a younger FFA member to close out your interview?
If there's a roadblock, go around it. That's my biggest piece of advice, because I have faced so many roadblocks. So many. Like, too many to count on one hand. And I have sat there and I have stood at these roadblocks, and I'm like, well, okay, it's a roadblock, can't do anything about it. But you can, and you might not have the tools to go around it yet, but you'll get the tools, and you might not know how yet, but it's gonna happen. Like, you just need to go around, or just keep going. Like, I know that sounds very cliche, but, you know, I have lost things, I have won things, I have been faced with rejection, and I have been faced with acceptance. You have to keep going, and you can't let the rejections stop you. Because when you start to let those stop you and you start to let those win, you can't move forward. You just sit there and you wait for something to happen, and nothing's going to happen. You just have to, like, keep pushing through the roadblocks and keep going for something to happen.
No, I think that's very valuable advice, that sometimes doors close, and then it's time to look for a window. And if the window's closed, go look at the back door. You always have to find your way through the situation, and sometimes those roadblocks, I like to say, are God's protecting you from something that you don't know. And it turns out being way better than you ever could have dreamed, and ended up happening. So great advice from Sophia. Thank you, listeners, for joining us once again and sharing your day with us. Please be sure to like and subscribe to Beyond the Jacket podcast. Make sure to follow us on social media.